Hey everybody, welcome to DBS Films Podcast. My name is Kellen. With me as always is my brother Brendan. Together we make movies with DBS Films. In today's episode, it is time for DBS's Films Q3 update. That is right, my friends. Every quarter we like to give you guys a little bit of an inside look at where we are, what we've accomplished, how things are going. Because again, we make movies for our fans with our fans. That means you are just as included in this process as we are. As always, be sure to take a look at our movies online. Horror in the Forest is now out there. If you go ahead and rent and review it, it means the world to us. You can also join our Discord community because that's where we have our open auditions for our movies, as well as so much more fun. So with that being said, I really do enjoy these episodes because again, like any business, this is kind of like a time to step back and reflect on where we're at. And I'd say, regardless of the actual data that we've gotten, which is really, really good, let's start off with the pure production standpoint. And, we are on target. And 3 movies have been officially filmed, with The Girl in Cabin 14 being wrapped last month, right around this time. And now we're in production for our 4th movie, which is the relook at the Haunting of the Murder House, found footage style. And really the big thing here is that's probably the biggest metric we have. There's a lot of things you can't control and can't control, but the big one is with these movies is we actually have a lot of control over the production, in the sense that it really relies on us hard working through it. And thankfully we have an amazing team that we're starting to put together that's been able to do it, because 4 movies in a year is no easy feat. So how are you feeling right now about the production side of things, Brendan?
No, I feel really good about it. The only thing that we can control right now is our production, and 4 movies coming in was the goal. I think this sets the foundation for just the production side of things, the production studio. With 4 movies, we basically will have a launch as the other movies hitting Tubi, as the other ones are falling off, and it'll kind of give us a consistent revenue stream. It also rewards our fans. They get new movies every quarter pretty much. And we're going to learn a lot through 4 movies. We're doubling the output that we had last year, and the growth has just continued to be phenomenal. I think the first step in this whole process of scaling up starts with the production, because after 4 movies, we might be able to get to 6 with 2 maybe mocks, or, 2 very isolated, contained movies, but it's not going to be able to scale up after that. But if we have 4 movies, then we kind of sit back and say, all right, like on a marketing perspective, what can we improve on? How can we build our community? How can we get better? How can we get to that 1,000 fans, which is probably our goal next year? I know we're already starting to talk about it now, but you have 4 movies out. We can, that'll be more people to find us. Our production will be bigger. And I think at that point we could start looking at, some of the smaller details and how we could really kind of grow. And also, at that point, we can start to look into, bigger distribution stuff. We can start to work on that stuff, theatrical releases, and, obviously what we've been trying to do for a while now, which is just community events. But it all starts with the 4 movies. And, that's the only thing I cared about this whole year. And we're pretty much right on track. We just have 1 more to go, and that'll give us 4 movie shot. And if we get the Bigfoot one done in December, it'll be 4 movies off to distribution. Whether or not that gets released, we don't know, but I mean, that is probably as successful as I could have wished for.
Yeah, and I think what we'll do in these episodes is, this first episode we'll really kind of talk about where we're at in the production side of things, and then the next episode we'll really kind of talk about looking forward, what some of those goals are. So again, highlighting the production, this is a massive milestone. And I think the reason for it is we almost kind of had like an early takeoff and then had to land right away when it came to DBS Films. We did film 4 movies in a year, our second year. So that was 2017, second year of DBS Films. And we filmed 4 movies. Now, it took us 3 years to get those last two movies, the Haunting or the Morgan Estate and the Lich out. But we filmed 4 movies in an entire year. Actually, 5 movies. No, we filmed 5, because we started off on Whitlow. It was Whitlow, then Into the Forest, then it was Haunting the Murder House, then it was Morgan Estate, then it was Lich. All in 1 year. We filmed it. We started off in January. I remember we talked about this before. 2017, you filmed 5 movies. You did it. You can, yes.
No.
All right, win. Prove
how it was Into the Forest, Suicide House, Morgan Estate, and the Lich.
Yes. But what you're forgetting is we filmed the Whitlow House in January of that year.
January.
Yep. So that's a 5 film. We
Yeah, it
spread out
must
the
have
bat.
been because
It was 5.
we went to Vegas after that
Yep.
one, and that was like
Mm-hmm.
February.
Yep, 100%. I remember we did the math here before, and I'm leaving it in just to show how correct I am. That being said, 5 movies filmed, but here's what I will say: 5 movies filmed is completely different than 5 movies released. And more importantly, the biggest issue we ran into when we were doing this is after we had these movies completed, and again, I think we got lucky with Into the Forest and The Haunting of the Suicide House being found footage, in the sense that, one, technical issues we kind of scraped through, and two, the editing process is simple. But once we hop back to cinematic, that created such a massive it created such a massive backlog that we literally released the the Devil in the Room, our last of the Hateful Eight, in November of 2020. So that was a 3-year turnaround in getting that movie together, complete, up and running. And in that period of time, Amazon, Tubi, all of these things were changing, all of these things were happening differently. So I think what's completely different now is we had the concept of what the execution looks like. Now I believe we have the execution behind it. So do you want to talk about how there is a massive difference in the rhythm that we thought we could make, and now in the rhythm that we have? And I really think it comes down to, we are building up a team that we can rely on. And again, part of our past productions was really, really good. But I think we've developed the skill set that, from start to finish, we can execute on these projects. And really, that just puts all of the weight on our shoulders in the sense of the execution. And it's something we stress a lot, where, if you're not the one moving this forward, it tends to end up stalling like the past movies did when we first started getting going. So what are kind of your thoughts on how the production has changed in that sense?
Yeah, I think the production is, once again, probably the thing that I'm most proud of now. I think we have a good idea, and I have a good blueprint of, how to shoot these things and get them done in the time frame that needs to be done. I feel like I probably write like a little bit of a PDF document, and someone could follow these steps, with the amount of time that we need. It's like, all right, here we are in pre-production. How much time do we have to write it? How much time do we have to shoot it? How much time do we have in post-production before we have to start the process again? But even on set, everything's getting a lot smoother. Each one kind of gets smoother, and they're getting smoother even though our production value is going up. The shots are getting more difficult. The stuff that we're doing is very complex. Even though we did shoot 5 movies, if you go watch pretty much like Suicide House, there was no real pop scares in that. There was no real crazy stuff. The movie's only an hour long. And you compare that to, Girl in Cabin 14, where we killed like 10 people, and there's murder guns and, blood squirting everywhere. And it was just a crazy kind of production. So I think it's really different. But being able to have a blueprint and a process to make these movies is absolutely critical, because I think a lot of people can a lot of filmmakers can give themselves too much time, and then you'll never have a movie, or you give yourself less time than you need, and everything kind of feels rushed and last minute. And that's not good as well. But I think there's kind of a good mix of how much time do I need to get this done, and how much time we have to execute, and then we kind of plan and move from there. But I mean, spoiler alert, the minute we finish one, we're immediately starting in pre-production in the next one.
That's exactly how it is. And I think, you highlighted something that I want to dive into now, which is where have the production value kind of increased in the sense of, what we've improved upon. And I am so happy, because I feel like it has been the two things I've been, mentioning for a long time now. And again, these are things that typically, if you execute poorly, they can take your budget up and they can look terrible. And that's special effects and production value. Do you want to go ahead? We've had amazing work from Tatum, from Kaylee, and now with Tegan. Really, really amazing step ups in the special effects. Again, special effects is really, really tricky for multiple reasons. But now we also have Aries and Ashley with Havoc. Really, it's something that between all of this improvement that we've had, it feels comfortable to scale into these things. And I mean, Horror in the Forest It benefited from the pepperoni eyes, which again, if you think about that, that kind of came out of a Forest of Death pickups for the intro to kind of salvage that. So we kind of started getting a little bit better there. A cold grave, we do add in some of our, higher level ones, which is the rock smash, because we had Tegan and kind of getting that together. We did have a classic, which was the throat slit, which again, we did approve upon. And we had a few items there, but I mean, man, the Bigfoot and now the girl in cabin 14, those are, I feel like we, really stepped it up to kind of add in that level of gore and special effects. And my favorite part about this really is, again, doesn't matter if you're good, doesn't matter if you're bad, just don't be boring. And I think special effects and production value, I think you're really going to see a step up there. Now, time will tell how they're received, but I just feel more and more confident going into movies now, being able to fill them with this level of excitement that comes from the special effects. And then now you have Havoc making things that do look like higher end props. And again, I'm very happy because I feel like those were the two things missing. If you look at acting or concepts or any of that stuff, I was not critical in any of that area. What I was critical in is gore and making it look like these things are not just us buying a generic order on Amazon. I think we're still kind of moving towards that, and eventually we'll probably have even more work. But I think those are the two things that I'm noticing the most when it comes to the improvement over these past two movies.
Yeah, I think for a lot of filmmakers, I think you got to take it one step at a time. I think your first step is to make a movie that can pass quality control. That means you have good color, you have good sound, you have good picture. Don't worry about anything else besides those three things. And that really kind of haunted us for our first 8 movies. Really, none of that stuff would have, it could pass quality control, but it's not going to get on these bigger streamers like we are now. So if you can get that done, then obviously focus on story. I think that's kind of where we're still at now. We're honing the stories. They're getting better. The pacing's getting better. Everything's getting better. But be able to just tell the story that you want to tell. And that's where we pretty much started with Girl in Cabin 13. Whatever you think of Girl in Cabin 13, that was the idea that was pretty much in my head. And we filmed it and we were able to make it. And then from there on, you can kind of fix the story issues. And then once you get that done, it's productions. Like, how can we get a better location? How can you get better special effects? And each one of those, we're slowly making the jump better and better each time. And now for the next one, we're going to start to really look at some visual effects and VFX stuff. We had something in Cold Grave that people really liked. And as long as you plan it and have an understanding of how this stuff is kind of done, you can kind of do it. But I think that's kind of the next step that we can kind of, move to. All the special effects will never be visual effects for me. I absolutely hate CGI, but I do think that a hybrid model will really work. And if there's a lot of spooky stuff with ghosts that you can do with green screen and some other like easy kind of technical stuff that we kind of dip our toes into, just try and figure out like what the best way to kind of get this stuff done, because that is production value. When people see, special effects, things floating in the air, people levitating, that's a way to cheat the Hollywood system. That's a way to get the Netflix look on a budget. And once again, my entire goal is to take this movie that we shoot for under $50,000 and try and make it look like $1 million. That's the only thing I'm trying to do, while telling like a good story. And with each one, I think our production value gets bigger and bigger. And I'd honestly love to survey people from Girl in Cabin 13 to ask them how much they think that movie was, and then show them something like Girl in Cabin 14 and then see what they think as a production value. Because I think the last two, especially Bigfoot and Girl in Cabin 14. And yes, they did push our production value. Like, we did spend more money on both those, but I think we might be getting 2 to 3 to 1 return on our money because they look really, really good.
Yeah, you're also going to need to adjust for inflation for Girl in Cabin 13 versus the other ones. But I'm very curious in that will tell. So another thing I wanted to highlight, one of the big benefits that we're seeing from the production side of things is how quickly we learn and how we can focus in on data points now. Because what's really cool is, again, going into the Girl in Cabin 13, I would say we were very hesitant. Our goal was to have a completed movie. We had a completed movie. Going into the Haunting of the Murder House, we're like, okay, let's go ahead and try and make a movie that, we've done before. Let's try our second movie, but we're still pretty nervous. Then I'd even say Forest of Death. We were still pretty nervous because that was a wild concept in the sense of the scale and scope of it. But with that being said, I feel like after Forest of Death, starting with Horror in the Forest, starting with Cold Grave. Bigfoot was a little bit, of a larger one to bite off. But now with Girl in Cabin 14 and The Haunting of the Murder House, I just feel really, really comfortable in the productions, which means instead of just panicking about getting the whole production done, we can start to isolate individual things, and individual things pop up. If you've been listening to the last podcast, I've been really excited to see if the concept of almost that quest like plot where you just meet different characters, character explains something, character gets killed, can end up really pushing the pacing. Will we be right? We'll find out because we're going to get data on that. But these are the things that start to pop up when you're no longer worried about, will we get this movie done? Now, again, it's always in the back of the mind because, making a movie is really, really tough and anything can happen. But I would say this frees us up to be more tactical in what we're improving versus just, can we get a movie done?
Yeah, I think when you're not nervous, and you're not struggling to just get something done, you can kind of sit back and relax and kind of figure out, what you want to do. When you ride a bike for the first time, you're just nervous about falling over. But then once you kind of get more comfortable with it, you try and, focus on smaller little things, going faster, doing cool tricks, like stuff like that. Same with filmmaking. It's the same with any skill. So as we get more comfortable, as I have more confidence in myself, as I have more confidence in my team, we can start to really kind of focus on the details. And I've said it multiple times before, the devil's in the details. How you make a really, really good movie is basically you got to find all the details as possible and, just really kind of hone in on every little thing to, make that movie great. I'm a big Stanley Kubrick fan, and, just go look at The Shining. All the little details that he put into that movie just made it absolutely phenomenal. And, I think we're still far away from that. I still think we're just trying to tell a good story, pace it properly, and, get that Netflix look. But, with each movie, the attention to details gets better. And I think the quality and the product gets better as well.
I definitely agree. And, it's going to be something we continue to see. Really, the next thing I wanted to talk about, too, is how kind of the model of making movies for our fans with our fans has really been showing to be working, in the sense of right now. I took a look at it. We had 63 roles have been cast from people that have found us via the Discord. Now, some of those people have multiple roles, but again, you put yourself on set, you find a way to get back there. But what's interesting is, you're starting to see, again, Tatum going off from an interview to doing special effects makeup for us to now having, a bigger role and then a lead role. You have Andrew coming back, who he didn't find us through the Discord, but our network is growing and our community is growing too. And, I feel like there was a point where I was pitching this model and we hadn't had a single person in our movies. Now we had Aries in there, then we did Horror in the Forest, and that worked. And we're really trying to figure out a way to make this model work ideally, because again, you're getting people like Tatum that are rising through it. You see Tegan again found us on that. She did the challenges. And this is why also through the workshop is going to be a big focus of ours. It is kind of on a little bit of a hold right now as we are doing the movies, but through the workshop system, finding talent within the Discord is going to be, a lot easier for us to then cultivate and bring on set. So again, this is still startup mode with us here at DBS. We're trying to figure out which way it works the best. There's a lot of risk when it comes to making these movies. So, you always have to see with the production, but so far leaning into the Discord and, getting the roles from the community has really proven itself to be something that, when they're on set, you're very passionate, you're ready to go. And it takes away a little bit of the wild card. There's always still a wild card, even if you are from the Discord and it's your first time on set, we're not quite sure, as sure yet, but it gives us a lot more confidence than just, again, random casting, which we've done before with the Hateful Eight.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. And I think that the more confidence you can have in your actors, the better performance you're going to get from both sides, from the production side and from the actor side. But I do think the workshops and casting for the Discord's always been priority. I just think that, the Discord needs reps. The only difference between actors that have had a lot of stuff and a lot of success and people who are hungry and want to be in a movie is just, reps and practice behind the camera. It's very, very hard to be on movies, to get be in front of the camera and get all these reps in. It's just difficult, and it's just experience. It's just kind of losing that freeze up moment when, I say action, you have all these people standing around and it's nerve wracking. but the better actors, the ones that seem more comfortable, are more comfortable. It's the same thing with me shooting movies. We've done so many that there's a level of comfort there. So our goal is always continue to give these people who are willing and motivated to do this a shot. And that's the only thing stopping them, is just they need more reps. And we're here to provide more reps. We're learning as well. We're a startup indie studio. You're a brand new actor, come on in. We'll work together. We'll get better together. And I think just looking back, I think we had Howard, we had maybe 3 or 4 roles last year, maybe 5 or 6. And, now we're up to 60. Like, that's pretty crazy. So we almost doubled it. We did double our movies, and we quadrupled the amount of actors that we have, and they just continue to grow. So, we're going to continue to lean into this. We're going to continue to find the right people for the job. And I'm a firm believer that the cream's going to rise to the top. You have Tegan, we found in there. Kaylee, we found in there. Tatum, we found in there. Ben came from the backstage, but he's really embraced the Discord, and he just won't go away. So, it's just, as long as we continue to build that network, I think it'll get to the point now where it's just like, all right, like, we're writing movies for the roles of around the people that we basically have worked with before. I'm always looking for roles with, to give you an example, Tatum, I needed someone to basically get run over with a lawnmower. And instead of casting and doing all these auditions and stuff, I was like, now Tegan, Scream Queen, does a great job. Let's get her in here. And boom, she's in there. And as long as you come on set and you're cool and you like this stuff and you're motivated, I have a list of people, and that's the first thing I do, because casting and auditions is a ton of time. And one of the resources that we just don't have is a lot of time.
Exactly that. And you heard Brendan, at the current rate that we're doing, in 2 years, we will have 6,000 roles from our Discord if we continue growing. That's some 10x for you. But that being said, it is something where it makes a lot of sense. And I think we're starting to see it, again, starting with the Haunted the Murder Houses. That was the first launch that we had the launch team, that we had the community. And, again, we've always talked about how the data is delayed. We don't really quite have as much information on Horror in the Forest, but we do have a lot of information coming in from Forest of Death. And again, I think this is exactly why we do what we do. The launch of the Forest of Death was absolutely amazing. It got us the buzz to kind of, and again, if you think of the launch team, this is just us kind of almost like with a kite, like running as fast as we can. And the higher we get that kite up, the easier it's going to soar. Because Forest of Death, between all of our launches, between the support on Rotten Tomatoes, between all of this buzz that we create for it, it got picked up by a big YouTube channel. Then just seeing that there is a huge milestone there. It got listed as the number 21 of top horror movies for this year from Rotten Tomatoes. Absolutely amazing. It is doing phenomenal. 2.4 million views on Tubi. Now, again, we are still in the bottom echelon of the waterfall. So in the grand scheme of movies, it's doing very well there. However, if we can make this the platform, and more importantly than that, do better each time with the launch teams and with our community, that's when the magic really happens. Us making more movies and these movies doing more success each time is the winning formula. And I think we're starting to see that, and hopefully it continues.
Yeah, from Girl in Cabin 13 on, each launch has been better and better than the last one. And it's cool to see, even on different platforms, there's a difference in just people's appetite and what they're trying to get and where it launches. Murder House is our highest launch on Amazon. It got up to number 15. Forest of Death, I think, peaked at 26, 27. And I was like, oh man, well, it didn't do as well as, Murder House. And it still did very, very well, especially for the budget that we made it. But then it's absolutely dominated Murder House in Tubi. And I think it's definitely found its audience in Tubi, whether that was part of the YouTube stuff or some of the promotions that we did in the beginning. It's going to take a couple more movies to kind of figure that stuff out, but it's done absolute work, and it's by far our highest grossing movie now. And it just continues to do well. And I think, it's really cool to see that kind of stuff, because, it just shows that there's different platforms on there for different stuff. And as we continue to move through these, these waters as far as distribution and different streaming platforms, it's cool to kind of see that, keep that in mind. And, we're going to put it on YouTube here shortly, and that's probably gonna be another million views. I think Murder House is up to almost 400,000, so it's chugging along. But I mean, to get something to on an indie level for the budget that we made, to have a movie watched 3 million times is going to be absolutely ridiculous. Like, that is something that, those are pretty mind-blowing numbers that I think a lot of Hollywood movies struggle even to get 3 million views on something. So, it's a success all around. It shows that there's a lot of people who are interested in that story. A lot of people watched it through. And the whole team and the people who were involved in that movie should be really, really proud, because I mean, that's a huge, huge, huge amount of visibility for an indie film, for basically what we made it for.
100%. And, this is kind of the last thing I want to highlight on this episode. That's the excitement that I think we see is, a year from now, what does it look like when we have these movies starting to come out? And, you hear all these things, and I think there's kind of that mindset in Hollywood of, oh, you make movies like, tons of money. This must be making so much money. But again, we're on the bottom trench of what you end up making money on as movies. So we're kind of dealing in it. And most movies are supposed to make their money back in 5 to 7 years as like a time frame. Now, again, we're a bit more expedited on that with having a much lower budget. But I really just kind of wanted to kind of highlight the cash flow element of this, in the sense that, where we are at now, the resources are still very finite and limited. Only now is Forest of Death kind of picking up a little bit of the slack. We basically had to pay for all of these movies up front with, The Haunting of the Murder House. So this is kind of highlighting, again, I've mentioned this before, patience is really the best thing that you can have if you're part of the community here, because we're still really at like the bare bones element to it. And again, if we can make this formula work, the cool part with it is very scalable. And, every time we release a movie, people tend to go watch our past movies. We have movies that are out there. And that is the cool part to this model, is every time you basically put that little tiny brick, you're building this monument, and it's going to become bigger and better. And the people that are helping us out now, once we get to that level, I mean, who else are we going to reward? So, what are kind of your thoughts on how basically that curve, which is kind of hurting us now in the sense that it's delayed, will really start to pick up going into next year?
Well, I think that's the biggest part with the production, is that it's not just making movies and getting the feedback, and getting the feedback and fixing your mistakes and making better movies, but it's really the cash flow. The cash flow is such a difficult thing in this industry. You're going 6 months without seeing any kind of cash. And then if your movie doesn't work on Amazon, it's going to take another 3 to 6 months just to get that Tubi check, or vice versa. So it's very, very difficult as a filmmaker to keep that cash flow going. This is why you see people make one movie 1 year, and then they wait a whole nother year or two to make another movie. But by April of next year, we should have a much stronger footing on cash flow, which, I'm always going to have to throw my personal money into this stuff, but at least that extra cash will be able to, add in more actors, add in more production stuff, get bigger and better effects. And, that's when we're going to start to move up in the budget. We kind of moved up the Bigfoot and Girl in Cabin 14 and the Murder House 2, just because I think it's necessary to kind of tell a bigger story, a bigger idea. And that money also came from Murder House. Murder House did absolutely phenomenal, and the forced death checks are now starting to come in. So all that money is going right back into these productions. But I think it's going to be crucial, because all of a sudden, there'll be less pressure on, absolutely missing on one of these, not getting a movie. Because at that point, the business is in jeopardy. Now we can kind of allocate that cash in a better way. And the good thing about that is I know exactly where to allocate the cash to get the biggest ROI. I'm not a new filmmaker where I'm like, I need $100,000 for this and that and this. I know exactly where we need to go with this money to get a better production, whether that's more time, whether it's more effects, whether it's getting, bigger star name actors. We know how to allocate that cash now, which is a skill in itself. So, I think the cash flow issues were one of the biggest hurdles with what we were trying to do. And hopefully, fingers crossed, as long as nothing crazy happens, by April of next year, we should have all the resources monetary wise to basically tell much better stories and cast more people from, the Discord or at wherever we want to find talent.
And that's the fun part, my friends. The flywheel continues to move. In the next episode, we're going to kind of talk about what we're expecting, a little bit more of a forecasting, what we're expecting for quarter four, and more importantly, what 2024 is looking like. That's right, my friends. We only got 2 more months left in the year, and things are going to be moving big. So we're going to continue to keep you updated. Again, take a look at Horror in the Forest online. It means the world to us, as well as taking a look at our community online. We make movies for our fans, with our fans. So if you want to be part of the process and in these movies, that's a place to be, my friends. Until then, have a good one, my friends.